Start that. Okay, we're set. We're ready to roll. And I'm going to go ahead and get us started. And what I want to do today is just chat with you about the potential reopening, kind of figure out where we're at, get some ideas, let you know what I don't know, which is a lot, most of it, but a little bit about what we do know and what our thinking is. First of all, I want to say it's really great to see you guys. It's been a long time since we've been able to be together, and a lot of times we don't get to see each other even during normal shop operations. But given the situation we have now, we're just not together at all. I'm going to go ahead and put everybody on mute to knock out some of that background noise. And let's see here. I think I'm still on. Yeah, you guys can still hear me, right? Give me a thumbs up. Yeah, okay. So it is great to see everybody. And I got to tell you, I'm kind of like Dick was talking about earlier about how missed being at the shop. He wanted to smell the smell of sawdust, and I think someone mailed him some sawdust. Is that right, Dick? You can't answer me because I muted you, but I think that's what the ending of that story was. These are really some weird times that we're going through. We all know that. We're not sure what the right thing to do is. The only thing I know is there's some real basic principles we're going to have to follow. We got to recognize that that anything we're doing, we have to be very careful not to harm ourselves or harm anyone else or create a situation which other people could be in harm's way. And I want to be very cautious about that. But the other thing we're learning now is that we're getting closer and closer to being at a point where we may be able to, it may be feasible to do some very limited reopening operations. We can discuss what that looks like and see what you think, see what ideas you've got. But I put together a few bullet points of some on PowerPoint that came as a result of discussions I've been having with Sharon and Rick and Gary and Travis. And we're very fortunate to have a couple other people who are joining us, who have joined the shop and are jumping into this operation with us. John Palmer and Brenda Wong. If you don't know them, they haven't been around too long, but they're both safety professionals. That's what they've done their whole career. UCSD and other places, but Brenda's particular specialty was biohazard management. Who would have thought? How is it getting better than that? When I met him last summer, I recruited him to help us with safety, with no idea we were going to have the need we do now. Brenda, just as it turns out, was scheduled to go to, as a result of the COVID thing, Brenda and John went down to Atlanta to CDC to learn more about the system, went to a conference down there. And they've been working with us very closely on talking to us about chemicals and process and procedures and all the things we can do to mitigate risk and to make sure that we're being as safe as possible. So I'm going to turn on my PowerPoint and quit rambling, get on to what I hope I have on here. You have to excuse me here. I'm seeing this.
It must be a corporate type meeting if we have a PowerPoint in, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah. You can't live without that. This is not my original presentation. Doggone it. Best laid plans. I'm going to restart that. Thought I had that lined up, guys. Okay. So I'm going to Okay, here we go. I think I'm there.
Dallas, is there any way that that can be increased in size? There you go. There you go. A little
Yeah,
bit. Is
that
it?
was-
Can you
yeah.
go? Is that full screen to you?
That's full screen to me.
Okay, it's
Is it
better.
to everybody else? Can you people give me thumbs up if you get that? Okay, everybody else got it as a full screen. Okay.
No, I didn't get it as a full screen, but it's good enough. It's fine.
Okay. So the basic idea is we're a few key points that we're going to stay with, make sure that we've got them right, is we're going to make sure we comply, of course, with all official guidance we get. That's kind of a minimum threshold we have. And any move we make, anything we go forward, we want to be very cautious. We recognize that we have average age and demographics that more vulnerable than most. We don't have an average age of 20 in here. And so we recognize there's people that have underlying conditions, and we don't want to be part of anything that's going to make anybody any worse for the wear. Certainly, as we're going through this discussion, I'd want to start off by just saying no date has been set yet. We're just trying to figure out what it looks like and see what we're doing. A lot of it's going to be depend on what you can tell us and what your thoughts are, and we'll get a sense from our membership how ready they are, and then we'll proceed only after we're very comfortable. And I mentioned before, we're very fortunate to have the expert advisors with John Palmer and Brenda. In order to do this, in order for it to be feasible, we're definitely going to have to revise some of our policies. We're going to have a excellent communication plan to make sure everybody's complying with it, and make sure that everybody understands what they're responsible for, and then we can go forward. And the thought is, once again, we go very slowly as we start. We want to do something that would allow us, give us time to assess the compliance, make sure that we don't have people doing things that were not intended. We learn some of the best practices of how we're going to do this. Give us time to educate our members. And I think there's also a question about how much demand there is. I've heard from several members who just can't wait to get started, but there's other people who are saying, I don't know if I'm quite ready to come back in there yet. So we need to assess how much demand there actually is too. And certainly we have to satisfy ourselves that we have an appropriate environment and a place that we're ready to move forward to. Any startup, I think, would start with only limited shop operations, no SIGs, no eye openers. Those would be online only. And education, there might be some things we can do with education, but that would be a secondary start too, I think would be the strategy. Now, this is the brainstorming that from Sharon, Rick, and I, and others, Gary and Travis, and safety experts. Think about maybe starting with, like, when we do get ready to start with maybe half the operation. Start with only 3 slots, so we give people lots of room to spread out. Plan on having a short break between shifts so that there's no overlap, and give us a little time just to kind of wipe down things and be ready to go. And then only allow 1 person in the laser room and 1 on the CNCs. And then as we go forward, as we see more, we learn more, we see how it goes, then we can begin to think about increasing the occupancy and proceeding forward. I mentioned some policy changes, and these are the things I don't want to either say these are the things we're going to do, nor the things that are the only things that should be done. These are just things we're talking about that we think would be appropriate, that what we've done from our initial brainstorming. Of course, face coverings would have to be required. I mean, that's just a given. We'd have to limit the occupancy of the shop. I mentioned before, only allow people to come in who have shop slots reserved. So we just don't take drop-ins. We don't allow people to wander in from the street and do shop doors. I think that we can do that with some locking the doors and doing a couple things there. Of course, we'd require the 6-foot distance between people, attempt to set up the shop so that that's not only possible, but almost engineered in. And then we're very careful with all the common touch points, switches, keyboards, controls on the laser and other places that people are constantly touching. We'd ask members to clean hand tools and other things they do before and after use. Not allow a self check-in at the computer. Have that to where we wipe the beginning of the shift. The supervisor takes one of those little wipes and wipes down the keyboard and the mouse, and then they're the only ones who handles that for check-in. Not allow any shared food. I mean, no bring in the donuts like we love to have and the cookies or a shared coffee pot.
That just doesn't sound fair.
Yeah, you know, I know that.
Yeah.
You should have heard the squeal from Gary when I talked about that.
What's the point in going anymore?
Yeah. There's some people who've expressed an interest and a desire to have gloves. I think there's some question whether or not there's any real safety value to it, but if it makes people feel more comfortable, I think the tight-fitting nitrile or latex gloves, we should allow that, a policy of allowing them to do that during this period of time. And then lastly, before any member is able to use the shop, we'd require them to sign a member responsibility statement. Basically, it says, I understand these are the rules we're going to comply or that we have, and I'll comply with them. We've created a little document that could go with, that would be a reminder for them. That's just this little thing here that just says, here's what the new rules of the road are, and here's the things that I will abide by in exchange for being able to use the shop. So then we've got a number of action steps we have if we did these things, and I won't get too far into that, but just to say that I think we're going to have to do a little rearranging of the shop so that we can keep the 6-foot distance. For instance, behind the bandsaws, I think we need to turn those benches and create an aisleway where force people to walk near the tool wall so they're not up against the bandsaws, and it also would take those benches so that and make them so people don't use them. I'm not saying remove them, actually turn them, so that people are not using those. And it also would allow access to the tool wall without having to go near somebody who's working a bench. I think this, with the reduced number of people, I think we say we're only going to use the old saw stop, the first one, so you're further away from that south door. Otherwise, you're too close when you come in that front door. We mark off the back work benches in the bench room and the center benches, just allow the use of benches on the side so that people can get in and out of there without coming too close to other people. Set up a little cleaning station. Brenda and John have some recommendations for us on the cleaning solutions we should use to clean hand tools. We know corrosion is an issue, and they have some solutions for that. So on metal surfaces, you know, obviously we wouldn't be putting anything that would be corrosive or lead to rust. So we'd have to be planning for that. And then we provide hand sanitizer in the machine room, the reception area, digital tools room. And I'd add in the digital tools room that we'd ask members when they go in to use the lasers, would have some material in there and have them do their own wipe down of the keyboards and controls and blast gates and things like that before and after they use the tools in there. And then I think we should do a good cleaning before we reopen the shop. Fact is, the virus doesn't last for months. There have been people in and out of the shop, but I think it'd be just a good time to get that place cleaned up and standing tall before we use it again. So, guys, that's the end of that piece of it. Feel free to unmute yourself. I'd love to hear some discussion, some questions, concerns, some thoughts. first of all, what do you guys think about the potential of reopening? What you see some things there that maybe making it feasible?
Great idea.
Alice, I think it's a great idea. I thought your plans were really good. My concern is availability of wipes and availability of hand sanitizer. Have we already resourced that, or?
We have not, but we've just learned today that John Langwood may be able to help us out with a little bit of that. But Costco does have the wipes, and I picked up one set of them there.
Excuse me, Dallas.
Yes.
I just got a text from the Palmers saying they don't have a Zoom invite. Please send again.
Okay. I'll do that while we're talking.
Tell you, Dallas,
More times we've not been able to get wipes.
I can tell you, I can't get wipes. The manufacturers are prioritizing retail groceries and medical people. So office supplies, we are at the bottom of the totem pole. It'll probably be the end of July before I even see a delivery.
Okay. Well, at Costco, I was able to pick up, they only limited to one of the things of 5, and I've got a pack of 5 of them. John and Brenda, I'm going to try and get them on right now, have some alternative things that we can actually use that National Institute of Health has certified being acceptable. So I'll let you guys discuss while I take a second and do this invite to them.
Have you guys thought about creating it as a one-way system so that we don't have to cross paths as we walk around the shop? I know that would be quite a challenge, but a lot of the supermarkets are doing that with their aisles now.
I'll take that since Dallas is busy there. If you notice in the supermarkets I've been in, Paul, it doesn't really work very well. I was in Trader Joe's the other day and they have that. And they literally have an employee stationed at the end of both ends of each aisle. And even then, I found myself wandering into the wrong aisle and they grabbed me and turned me around and point me back in the right direction. Dallas had talked about that, and I shared with them, I just, keep in mind, we're only going to have in the tool room a maximum of 4 people. So I would hope that we could, that they would take responsibility for making sure that they walk around each other. Kat and I were both in the shop this morning, and we were both going back and forth, and I was careful to, if he was going down one aisle, I'd make it a point to go up the other aisle. I think if you try to formalize, I guess what I'm saying is I'm not sure it would work.
Yeah, I can see how that would be very challenging to use the machinery and have people moving through the shop like that. But if we're real careful, I don't see why not. I was at the supermarket for senior hour this morning, and it's impossible not to notice that the people, without thinking, are going within a foot of each other. Employees in the store, people in the public, we're going to have to be extremely vigilant, I think.
Some people are not very vigilant about that. So I have one question about just using one of the saw stops. I mean, if we close that back door and have everybody enter in the front door, then we could still use both saw stops. And they're certainly far enough apart that we could do that. I just, most places are doing that. They're only letting people enter at one entrance. It's just a thought.
I'd consider that too. And some people are bringing in materials is one thing. And enough people have the combination, they can come in and they can unlock it. The other concern. We could play with it both ways. I really envisioned that the front door, we would open the door between the glass lobby into the reception lobby, but lock that door again by the that comes into our own lobby, so that the shift supervisor can control that. We don't allow the public just to wander in like they do sometimes. Sharon, you're
Sorry, Dallas. The Palmer said they haven't gotten anything yet. What email address are you sending it to?
I sent it to both Brenda and John, the same one I've always sent it to.
Okay, I'll tell them.
Can't they just log in through PunchPass?
May I add a comment here?
Please.
As a shift supervisor, it's going to be quite difficult to maintain a 6-foot distance at times between myself and the individuals using the shop, particularly if they have a question that they need answered or need help with a setup, or I'm trying to show them how to do something or helping them in a variety of ways. Thoughts, comments, suggestions on that?
You know, I've thought of the same thing, and I think some of that's going to be a real challenge. You're going to have to pray for good eyesight for them, but we're going to have to insist they stay 6 foot back. Some things we just may not be able to do in the same way. You might be able to get up close to them.
I've been hearing that casual passing by isn't an issue. It's really the amount of time you spend in proximity to somebody that might impact.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that, Jerry. Can you say it again?
I've heard that just casually passing by somebody isn't really nearly as large of a threat as hanging out near that person for a significant amount of time.
You know, I've heard so many different things, I'm just not sure what's what, but all the experts keep saying the 6 foot thing.
What about different people using the same machine?
They wouldn't be using the same machine at the same time, would they?
No, successively. But if somebody's using the saw stop and you turn it on, you turn it off, and then there's possible contamination through the on switch.
Well, I think everybody needs to be aware that the machines are not going to be sterilized between each use, that they got to keep their hands away from their face, and before they eat or leave, they should be washing well.
That's a hard one.
Well, if we have wipes available, it certainly is within the realm of reality that the individual using a piece of equipment can grab a wipe and wipe down the most used surfaces, such as on and off switches and what have you, before they use a piece of equipment.
We're going to go through wipes really fast then.
We might also look at requiring them to wash their hands before the start of each shift.
You know, that's one of the things we had on there originally, and I didn't catch that. We're going to encourage hand washing throughout the shift, actually. That's a good one, Dana.
Travis, I don't know if you got that thing I sent you yesterday or the day before, but one of my suppliers sent me a new idea they've come up with. Picture a giant skeleton key. It's about 4 or 5 inches long.
Oh, yeah.
It's made of metal. We could make it on the 3D printer out of plastic. And the idea is you just keep it in your pocket or on your keychain. And instead of touching the keypad with your finger, you touch it with the tip of this skeleton key. And it just avoids the skin touching the contaminating a surface.
It's been modeled in Fusion 360, and I'll be putting it through my 3D printer. But whether or not, if it's capacitive touch and it requires your actual finger to work, which would be like a touch screen, that's not going to work. But if it's just pushing a button, that would work. So I'll share it with you guys when I finish printing the first one. But I did receive that picture and had no qualms about mocking it up and printing my own.
Yeah, hey Dallas, a couple quick comments. Yeah, so I believe that none of our machines require any capacitive touch. So it's just a physical and mechanical switch. So that would work some degree or another. Although if it's a common skeleton key, you still have the same problem, right? Are you suggesting that we have dozens of them around the shop, or what? I'm not sure what's being.
If I could just if I could just describe it briefly, essentially put your finger through what is maybe a 3-inch long rectangle, 1 inch tall, and there's a hole at one end. So that's just simply how you hold on to it. And think of it as an extended finger, something that is not your physical finger, but something that is a plastic extension. You could say, you could do it with a toothpick, you could do it with a popsicle stick. I mean, it's basically just a way of not touching something, but still depressing a button. And I think that's really the concept there.
And it would hang on the machine.
It's not just switches we're worried about, though. You've got to remember we've got blast gates to open and close.
Oh, totally agree.
We've got fences and so forth that have to be adjusted. There's still going to be a lot of other touch points.
Does anyone know if nitrile or latex gloves has any contrary effect when using the saw stop, i.e. the conductivity of the blade?
I would imagine that once it cuts through the nitrile glove and hits your finger, it'll conduct.
Yep. Stop's got to do some kind of RF or capacitive sensing, and nitrile isn't going to affect that.
I say, Jerry, be the guy I'd ask that question of.
You know, if you're wearing a mask like we're supposed to, like Mary said, you can't touch your face, you can't touch your nose, mouth, whatever. So you're safe because it's getting in through your facial orifices that's the problem. So
Yeah,
I think we're overreacting and not touching the switches if we're all wearing masks.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and also remember everybody's wearing eye protection, so you can't just directly go up and touch your eye either. So I agree with you, Rick. I think it's probably a little bit of an overreaction.
Yeah.
Let me make just one more quick comment on the door in the back. If in fact you wanted to close that door and you said, well, people have the combo, you can change that combo in the back box, and so let nobody in that way, at least or just a few people have it, so that nobody in general could get in that way. So
yeah, we sure could do that, no question about it.
Okay, a couple things. My understanding is the main form of transmission is through breathing, and that touching of surfaces, while it can happen, is the experts aren't really worried about that. So I think we can go overboard with switches. We decontaminate, wipe things down in between shifts, we're probably going to be okay. But again, let the Palmers do that. The other thing is that ventilation is a huge issue. Being in an enclosed space is much more dangerous than being outdoors. Rather than closing down the back, I think we should keep the roll-up door open, and that gives you more ventilation in the back area. And I think that would be more beneficial than trying to do a one-way thing through the front, or through the front and back doors.
You always put a barricade tape up or something across the door just to prevent anybody from coming in. Just danger tape.
Like we have.
Yep.
So we've got John and Brenda. Are both of you on?
Yeah, on one login, unfortunately. We finally got the meeting ID.
Sorry.
So I was hearing some of the comments, and I agree that the gloves are a personal issue. They will be necessary if you're deconning because of all the decon solutions. So you should, as a ship supervisor, wear them while you're washing everything down, door handles, light switches, whatever. But I don't think you have to necessarily wear it in the shop. But if you did, I don't think it's a big deal either.
What are the concerns we have, guys? I heard what Jeff had to say. I do think that's wise. The other thing is kind of interesting, since we have started exhausting that dust collector out of the building, we actually have a negative pressure. We're moving some air through the building. That may help some too. I don't know. I wouldn't want to make that my mainstay, but it's better than having stagnant air, I've got to believe.
Well, we turn on the fan, the overhead vent during.
Okay.
Somebody's phone's on.
Another set of fans are the ones in the laser.
Yep.
Dallas, have you considered, I'm reading you on a small screen, so I don't know if you were considering sanitation stations like they have aboard cruise ships, 2 or 3 scattered throughout the floor?
Well, the sanitation station would consist of some things to wipe down tools and some hand sanitizer and some wipes and a place to throw away the material.
Well, no, just the hand sanitizer button, that comes in the bulk. That you put your, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what they, machine room, laser room, and in the reception area.
Okay.
Is what I'm thinking about, Pat.
I've never understood why the emphasis on washing your hands and
I'll explain it, or my wife will. Basically, soap breaks down the lipid envelope on the virus, and it basically becomes inactive. It's very easy to take that lipid envelope on this virus, on the coronavirus, and soap for 20 seconds just destroys the outer envelope, and therefore the virus just falls apart. Yeah, it's non-viable and it washes off. So that's why they keep saying it. If you get it on your hands, watch yourselves. I guarantee you, I'm an expert on trying to keep my hands off my mouth, and I still do it all the time. Even when I have hazmat gear on, I want to reach up there and go through my mask. So it's a very natural thing. If you watch doctors and nurses and everybody else, you tend to want to itch your nose, itch your mouth, itch your eyes, and that's where you get the virus. So.
But I thought it was primarily inhaled.
Inhale is a misnomer. It doesn't take much to get it on your lips or in your mucous membranes, and it will transmit. So it doesn't have to be inhaled. They worry about it getting into your mouth, nose, or eyes by way of droplets. That's the inhale part you're hearing about. So,
and if it comes into contact with your mucous membranes, it automatically enters your body.
I didn't hear that.
Go ahead, Brenda.
Oh, if it comes into contact with your mucous membranes, like your eyes, nose, or mouth, then it automatically attacks the body.
Likewise, if you have a cut, I guess.
Yeah, well, you could get it by way of introduction through the blood supply too, but it looks for those ports of entry. The spikes are what grabs onto an ACE receptor, an ACE2 receptor. There are more of them on the lining of the upper respiratory tract and down into the lower lungs. That's why you're hearing it's a respiratory virus, but it can get into your mouth, and once it's in your system, it'll get there. It'll find those cells. So you do have to worry about surface contact in the sense that you get your hands contaminated, or gloves. It wouldn't make any difference. And then you reach up and touch what they call the T-spot, the 2 eyes, the nose, or the mouth. And that's the unfortunate thing. That's why glasses and face masks are advised. They try to keep you from touching your nose, mouth, or eyes.
So what about food?
What if someone wanted to wear a face shield? Would that?
Yeah, face shield will work, but of course, yeah, it's good for the dust. It's good for impact. I mean, from the safety perspective, and that's why you'll see a lot of medical personnel with that face shield on, because that really does prevent them from touching that whole T-spot area. They'll usually wear a mask underneath the face shield, but face shield all by itself is pretty good, except it doesn't really contain the sneezes and coughs very well. You'll still get that to come out. So.
Got it.
Is there a danger with food since it's potentially a problem in your mouth?
Yeah, you could probably. Most food, they don't even say you have to really rinse or wash it because it doesn't live long on that surface. But yeah, you could conceivably eat the virus. Obviously, if you can touch it, you can eat it too.
Yeah,
so.
but it's not foodborne, not like salmonella or something. But it's basically.
Brenda, we're having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, sorry, it's not foodborne. However, it's not a foodborne illness.
I got it.
Yeah, well, it's not a bacteria either, so.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah. Everybody says kill the virus. You can't kill the virus, but besides that, yeah. So we want to inactivate it, and that's the big thing. Is if somebody comes in inadvertently sick, That's what our big concern is. And so, you know, you just want to limit the possibility. This virus has got an R naught over 6. And that means it's really easy to transmit. And that's largely, though, because you don't know you're infected with the pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic cases. So,
Is there
Are they
that?
going to require any? Are they going to require any kind of a take the temperature of the individual before they're allowed in the shop? I know that you're saying if you're not feeling well, stay away. But what if they don't feel that bad, but they're running a temperature of 100 degrees and they don't really notice it?
yeah, the 100.4 degrees is what they're using as one indicator, but it's probably only in what, 20, 30, 40% of the people that have a slight slight temperature indication. So it is a good thing along with everything else, but you'd probably have to take it at home if you want to. We do it 3 times a day. Brenda and I do.
So then go back to the T-spot, you know, we're requiring wearing face masks, but what about actual, you know, I wear glasses. Should I have eyeglasses or shot glasses over the glasses? But, you know, I can easily reach around behind my glasses and scratch my eye.
Yeah, you can. So if it would help you from doing that, or the face shield, as somebody mentioned, but I'm also worried about the safety glasses as a shift supervisor, just because you're going to be spraying probably with foamy, et cetera. You know how easy it is sometimes to bounce those things off the inadvertent wall, door handle, light switch, or just point it in the wrong direction. And then you're washing your eyes out again. But you're right, glasses are probably good enough, except that if you're really apt to touch your eyes, which I sometimes scratch my eyelids, safety glasses are harder to get around.
So I have a question. I have a question for you. What is the situation when, if, as you said earlier, there's someone who comes into the shop who is infected, has no symptoms, has no knowledge that they're infected, and they're not coughing or sneezing? What are the methods of transmission in that case?
Well, that's a good point. If they've touched their mucous membranes or something, if they're shedding the virus, we even know they'll shed it in feces and in obviously saliva, but tears, etc. They're finding more and more that you can shed it in various human body fluids, etc. But the problem mainly is either spit, saliva, or possibly tears or something like that. The problem is you probably got it on your hands, etc. Now, if you're asymptomatic and feeling well, you can start to shed the virus usually about 72 hours, someplace between 48 and 72 hours after having been exposed. So if your body is replicating, it usually starts shedding within about 2 to 3 days. And yet symptoms on average don't show up to 5 to 6 days, and we've heard anywhere from 2 to 14 or never at all.
And one of the infectious disease docs at UCSD told me yesterday that you can still be shedding the virus up to 6 weeks after you've been infected.
Wow.
Yeah, despite the 2-week quarantine we've been hearing about, they are finding anecdotal cases of people shedding the virus as long as 5 to 6 weeks after they've been infected. This is the information. It's a novel virus. We're learning a lot every day. But back to trying to keep I'm not trying to scare anybody. The shop could be safe if people just ask themselves the questions and behave properly. But a little decon is not a bad idea. So,
is there any general criteria that we should find acceptable for face coverings? I mean, around town, I wear a balaclava and I just pull it up if I go in the store or whatever. I think that would be safe in the shop, but you see a lot of people who just wear long bandanas, and there's, you know, the safety issue of something like that getting tangled in a piece of equipment. Obviously, it'd have to be really long, but I mean, it's, you know, people may come in with just bandanas over their face, and, you know, there they are, got their nose down in the bandsaw. And
I tend to agree with you there, is that we do have to worry about something loose like that actually catching, especially if they haven't used something that really ties everything back, just like hair or anything else we worry about. So that's one more aspect of this that we have to be careful, but mainly that's to keep an infected person from coughing, sneezing, or spitting the stuff out. That's largely why the mask is there. On the other side, if you're the non-infected person, they provide a little protection, but as we've seen, the N95s are great if you're a medical worker or whatever, an N100, but they often have that exhalation port. So having to put something over it or in it so that if you do have the virus, you're not coughing it out through the exhalation port is also a good idea. Back to what you're talking about, the better it hangs to your face, the better it's going to protect everybody. You know, if you're worried about it incoming, it protects you better, if it fits you better. And if you're worried about spitting it out or whatever, just in case, which is largely what we're worried about, then yeah, you don't want it loose enough so that it grabs someplace and gets torn off, or it comes loose all the time. So
suppose suppose the shop is open for a couple of weeks and some member is diagnosed COVID positive. What happens to the rest of us?
well, again, if they're diagnosed COVID positive, then the vector follow-up, shall we say, the
Quarantine. I would say that if you've been in close contact with that person, then you should be implementing the 14-day quarantine for yourself.
Yeah. So the problem you'll get into is the way that that's handled right now is the county hires more people, is they will hopefully be contacted by that person. That is supposed to be reported either by you yourself. Obviously, if you got tested and you know you're positive, your doctor is going to be reporting you to the contact with and when. They usually go back, right now they say 72 hours, 2 to 3 days, and see who you've had close contact with, more than about 5 or 6 minutes of interpersonal contact without any protective devices.
By the way, Dwayne, one of the member responsibility things on that document that I showed, one of the last ones was, if you should become ill, or if you should come in contact with somebody who potentially could have, we're asking the member to sign off on understanding their responsibility to notify us. And I would think we would shut down immediately until we can do the tracing and find out what's going on.
I don't think it's a bad idea. It's much quicker than waiting for the follow-up from the county, because you do index case tracing or index case follow-up, and it's going to take time no matter how fast they move. So if you could send that out quickly and tell you when you've been in the shop, the last 3-4 days or whatever and stuff, once you know, then that would give everybody a quick indication of who might have been exposed and who since then might have been exposed.
And that's one of the times that our video system would be a big help, because we know everybody who was in there after that person.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I think that's a good way to sort of limit the fear factor to everybody in the shop envelope.
But technically, I guess anybody in the shop would not have been considered close contact, because we're all going to be distancing and we're all going to be wearing masks. So would we even be considered as close contact when they do their review?
So let's say Brenda got it, and then Sharon was the shift superintendent or something like that. Brenda finds out a few days later that she's got it, right? It usually takes about 72 hours before you start shedding enough that even a test is valid, a PCR test is valid. So now she's got it. Now anybody that was in the shop will also have that 3-day window before a test is really good anyways, but obviously that would be the follow-up. One, even if you don't think you got exposed, which you probably didn't, if you're wearing a mask and socially distancing and washing, cleaning yourself, et cetera, et cetera. So if you didn't touch something Brenda did and she didn't spit at you, you're probably okay, but you might want to get tested about 3 to 4 days after possible exposure. And more testing is being made available as we speak. The county sites are coming up as we speak right now. So you could get tested by PCR, have your doctor test you or something like that. And now you would have a lot more assurance that maybe you didn't get exposed.
Well, I think that we might have to provide our members with testing information and sites. Because like I'm a Kaiser member and they're not going to test me unless I have symptoms.
Yeah.
And
the county now has it, at least up here, anybody can go over and get a test. You don't have to do anything.
Right.
Just to drive up and do it. You just call and make an appointment. You don't need a doctor's appointment or anything. Or doctor's note or anything.
They just opened that up on Monday.
And both the governor, just 5 minutes ago, I was watching TV. The governor basically said on the state COVID site, there will now be a link off that site that gives you all the open testing sites by your zip code. So you can sit down with your home zip code, type it in, and it'll show you which ones are open and where they're at. So we can provide that information to our members, but I think that's the best thing is provide them the quick link to find the closest test site that might be open and available to them.
okay, but I think we should provide it. If we're pointing to them and saying, you were in the shop with so-and-so who is now infected, here's the where you can go and find out the closest testing site.
Yeah, you know, that notion about providing information sort of makes me think that the way this might best be framed is you're being provided with what you need to know to make a intelligent decision on your own. You are opting in to come, and by the way, here are all the rules, et cetera, but framing it such that we are saying this, we all understand, is a scenario that contains some measure of risk. Here's everything that we've done to help prevent problems. Here's information you should know about the situation. And if you're willing to take on that small measure of risk, then we welcome you back to the shop. But I'm just trying to say it's different from saying, hey, the shop is open, come. It's more like saying, we're doing the best we can to be responsible, and yet you are making the decision. And Dallas, you're frankly saying that when you ask them to sign the piece of paper that says that they'll comply with the new policies, et cetera. And so, I don't know, it's sort of a mindset that I just had a realization we should probably just frame this whole thing in those terms overtly, rather than just saying it's open, here's some guidelines, et cetera, come on in if you want. No, you're accepting a certain measure of risk. We're doing our best, but here's what you should know.
I absolutely agree. And again, we should advise people, again, basically by way of what we're providing them to sign off on, is that people with certain underlying medical conditions are at even higher risk than perhaps an age issue or something like that. And they better take their personal risk assessment seriously. This is a volunteer situation. You're making the risk assessment on yourself, and you're coming into a member shop, not a commercial enterprise, a member shop where we're advising you to take that risk seriously and decide whether, you know, the use of the shop is within your risk tolerance. So,
hey Dallas, we've talked a lot about testing here. Has anyone here taken the test itself?
The only person I know is your son.
I tell you, I had to go through it with my son, and it is extremely painful to even watch, let alone have a swab stuck about 8 inches up your nose.
Yeah, they're finding more and more that the PCR test by way of spit or saliva may be as efficacious as the nasal pharynx swab, which you're right, goes like all the way to the back of the brain, it looks like, when they stuff that swab up your nose.
Absolutely. So I would ask, is it worth the risk of potentially being tested just based on the complexity of the test itself?
I don't think, even though that is very uncomfortable if provided by a medical person, I wouldn't worry about that risk as much as going to a site with a lot of people that think they're sick and possibly being exposed while you're waiting to get swabbed. That's why they're setting up appointments. But nonetheless, I'd have a little bit of concern where I go and whether I'm comfortable with the site and their handling of things. So, but those are all back to what somebody mentioned as your own personal idea of risk and facing that as a possibility if you use the shop.
Hey, John, I had a question about respirators versus face masks. I have
Yes.
a respirator with an exhaust valve on it. It's like a P100, so it seals pretty closely to the face.
Right.
I guess I've been hearing that the main reason people wear masks is to protect others from themselves. Does a respirator with that kind of flapper valve on the exhaust do that?
No, it doesn't, because it does a minor, but you're really exhaling through that port, which makes it easy to breathe. On the other hand, another side of that risk, if you have, like I do, and Brenda has a lot of allergy right now, I was cutting some pine out in the backyard here, and I was sneezing like crazy. And I can imagine if I'm in the shop with or without an N95 on or anything else on, sneezing like crazy, anybody else in there is going to be worried and using a lot of toilet paper. So I agree with you that you need to either put some cotton inside that port or put something over it, like a filter of some type that you can tape around the port, just so you're not blasting it out if you should cough or sneeze or something like that, or breathe heavy. So
yeah, N95s have that?
Yeah, a lot of them have those ports. They don't have a real easy option if they've got those breathing ports, because the breathing port is just a little silicone or rubber flap that opens up as you breathe out to make it easy, and then it seals as you suck in. So it protects you on the inhale side, but it doesn't protect the environment as much on the exhale side. So you might have to put something like, not a bandana, but another cloth mask over the N95. It would keep the N95 clean, you know, if you had like a small cloth mask over that exhalation port.
So would a face shield with,
Yeah, that would help a lot, because you've now got to breathe out through the exhalation port and out from behind the face shield. You know, I think by that time the droplets are largely, being monitored, and you're more than 6 foot away from everybody. I think that's probably pretty safe.
Hey, Dallas, Tom Collin here. Just a thought. For the shift supervisors, I'd like to propose a policy that eliminates the shift supervisor from rendering judgments that change from supervisor to supervisor. It would seem to me that it would be a good policy to require a face shield of anybody working for the period of this coronavirus, for all the reasons that everybody's discussed, and also it's standard. So every shop supervisor knows what right looks like, applies the rules the same way, and we have the highest probability of minimizing whatever liability is there. My 2 cents.
John, would a face shield make that much difference to us?
Well, it keeps you from touching your mouth, nose, and eyes. So that's the contact spread, you know, in addition to spitting out droplets, that's it. But if you still have a mask under the face shield of any type, N95 or otherwise, the face shield will help to prevent, and it's an additional layer that prevents you from spitting out as much, because you've got to go past the face shield too. So it's nothing, but it's consistent.
I think it also sets up an extra barrier that prevents things like sawdust getting in your eyes, which then is something that people immediately want to react to. So if we have a face shield and a mask, I mean, I wear safety glasses in the shop, and I still get sawdust in my eyes sometimes if I'm doing a big data or something that's throwing a lot of chips around. You get a little piece in your eye and you want to react to that right away. We don't want them doing that. The face shield provides a standardized situation for the shop supervisor, improves safety. It's not off the edge of what norm shop processes would be, and it helps prevent stuff from getting in your eyes. Seems like a good idea.
Here's a quick comment, Dallas. Are face shields readily available these days?
I know a guy who can make them pretty well, Paul.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
Paul.
Yeah. Yes, once the 3D printer is fixed, we could actually make them in the shop and either, I don't know, provide them with sterilization in between or sell them at a nominal figure. I figured out they cost about $3 a piece to make.
Oh, that's not.
I say sell them so everybody has their own.
It is easier than deconning, although it's pretty easy to decon one too. But you're right. And again, back to the idea that in a shop environment, a face shield is a reasonable thing for things like table saw, miter saw, you know, planers, sanders, joiners, all the heavy duty dust producers, routers. Yeah, it's not a bad thing to actually have all the time. It's just we've gotten away without doing it. I forced that on our shop guys at UCSD whenever they were using heavy duty power tools that threw up a lot of dust, because you likely lose control if you got something.
Is that something we require like in the laser room?
Yes, I don't think those shields are going to give you the kind of safety that you need, perhaps with a you know, with a lathe. But you know, they're not enormously robust, but they sure are going to help with virus particles.
Yeah. I sort of agree with you. If something came off the lathe heavy, those face shields, especially the self-printed ones or these lightweight printed ones, won't. So.
No, that I always felt like we kind of lax at the shop with the lathe, not requiring a structural face shield. I always turn with a face shield. But some people just turn with safety glass. I don't think that's good enough.
I think that would be another good thing about requiring the shield, because I know if I go in a store, I feel a little out of place because I'm the only person with a shield on. But if we required it, then we wouldn't feel like idiots wearing them.
Right.
And I think for certainly for the interim, and maybe for the shall we say the new norm, it will be face shields anyways, even if we get past this in 6 or 8 months or something like that. It would be nice to know that people are abiding by what's a reasonable shop safety feature. So I don't know. Dallas, what do you think?
Let me think about that and talk to more people about it. I heard what was said, and I hear all the advantages to it. I think there could be some downsides too, but let's take that under advisement.
Okay.
With regards to all this information that's been shared and the issues in the discussion, Dallas, what general criteria are you looking at before you say, okay, let's open the shop, 3 people in the shop area, 1 in the laser, 1 at the CNC? I mean, are we phase 2? Are we phase 3? What are you thinking?
I think by the county and state rules, I think there's nothing that would prevent us from opening right now. I think that the standard should be, are we absolutely comfortable now that we've heard all these things, and have we thought through all the things that we need to do, and have we done our mitigation? I think that's still the thing. And even when we start, I'm really concerned about having a few maverick members who go out and violate the rules, get up in your face or get too close to each other. I'm a little worried about that. But that's the sort of stuff we face all the time in running the shop. You have somebody do something stupid on tools too, and that's what we control. So it's a matter of mitigating risk. So the answer to that, Dwayne, is I think it's once we've satisfied ourselves that we've thought through all this, we've heard everything we can possibly hear, and we deem it to be a reasonable risk. I think we're getting close to that.
Alice, I also think you need to get a clear indication from everybody on this Zoom, all the shift supervisors. You know, how are you all ready, willing, and able to establish your shift when we say go?
Yeah, I think that's a matter that we will need to do. Not asking for that today because I think people need to digest it a bit.
Right.
And I intend that actually to be some separate conversations, one-on-one conversations, so everybody feels comfortable saying no, and make sure we understand what the situation is. I don't want anybody to feel compelled to do it. That's not at all where we're going to be. This is still woodworking. It's still our passion, but it's nothing that we're going to do if we're not comfortable in doing it safely. And so that'll be done with some individual conversations and in a place where I wouldn't ask for public commitments or anything at this point.
Some people are arguing that the reason there's a big push to open things up is economics.
I can't quite hear you.
Some people argue that the reason there's a big push right now to open things up, particularly from the White House, is an economic thing. Is that an issue with the shop?
You know, our members have been very good about understanding that the situation we've got, and we're maintaining our memberships. Reopening like we're talking about now really will not give us any more money. The only thing that would really increase our revenue is when we can start doing education again.
New members, yep.
Well, and new members would help too, but financially build enough buffer to a good rainy day fund. We cannot be driven by economics on this.
And we're not. I just want to piggyback on that because it's a good question, and you all need to be comfortable reiterating the answer to people that ask you. And as Dallas just alluded to, we've got enough reserves to last us for a long time. So it's not driven by economics. And if you haven't thought it through, just to reiterate what Dallas just said, is opening up is not necessarily going to make us any money. So. What's far more important is that we keep our members safe, and the only priority higher than that is keeping all of you safe. So that's what we need to focus on, and that's why we want to wade into this thing gradually and slowly, because you all know, just like we do, that all of this, no matter how well planned, is not going to come off as we think it is, and we're going to learn some things. We're going to have to adjust, but safety above all. Certainly well above economic.
Yeah, we need to be able to back out.
About opening the shop again, has there been any consideration given as to whether we might have limited classes, one person per bench, or is classes still considered too dangerous right now?
Well, I think Dallas touched on it earlier, is I think we need to put all of our energy into getting the shop open first. We have thought about that. We have talked about it. Frankly, we don't have a good answer to that. Paul and I have talked a little bit about it, and I'm sure he's thought more, and I've thought privately about how we would do intro class, for example. And as Dallas alluded to earlier, we could probably do that via Zoom. But when it comes down to teaching somebody how to use a table saw and stay 6 feet away from them, that's where the cheese gets binding. So until Paul comes up with the perfect solution to that program, we're a little bit stalled. But let's focus right now just on getting the shop open and make sure we can those of us that already know how to operate can do it safely, and then we'll work on the education part.
Hey, this is Dick Huntington. I just have a question regarding mechanics here. If we're going to go to 3 people, and our membership was increasing rapidly, we were getting more and more people in the shop, it seems like we're going to have to set up a priority system, because there are going to be a lot of people who are going to want to use the shop. If I come in one day, this is another problem. I come in one day and I have a glue up, and the next day I want to come back and pick it up or do the next step. That could be a bottleneck too, because you're going to have a bunch of glue ups and things in the shop. But anyway, there are mechanical things that have to be thought through to make it, fair to everybody. Because if I'm in the shop today, I'm probably not going to get in again for a couple of weeks, realistically. Right?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that too. I haven't thought of a solution for it. I'm envisioning a couple of people I've talked to. I think once we open up the slots, I can see them reserving like 10 slots, and we only have 3 available.
Yeah.
Well, treat it like toilet paper. You can only get so much.
That's right.
One slot every week.
The one mitigating factor there, though, Dick, is and I think Dallas mentioned it earlier also, is we do have a number of members that will be reticent to come to the shop until we get a little further down the road. And if you look at what's going on the golf courses right now, my wife and I are both golfers. We thought the minute they opened those golf courses, bam, they'd be full. And that's not what's happened. I mean, there's some people have been anxious to get out there, but there's also obviously a lot of people laying back and and waiting to see what happens until they become a little bit more comfortable with it. So, well, it's a good question, and it is a problem. We'll have to work our way through that.
I'll tell you, when they open the barber shop, though, I'm going to be in line.
And my wife keeps threatening
to reservation.
Yeah, my wife keeps threatening to put a bowl on my head and just use scissors, you know. So
I take it that we would develop a checklist for between sessions for the decontamination at the beginning and the end of each one.
yeah, we're working on that right now. That's Sharon and everybody's been working on that. We'd like to keep it down to a minimum number of reagents and well identified locations, and we're going to even time ourselves through it. Dallas and I said maybe what we should do is run through the decontamination process, make sure it's easily done in 15, 20, 25 minutes at the most, and that everybody could easily identify what we're talking about. So yes, we'll have that either as a checklist and a video or something like that. Sharon's agreed to, didn't you agree, Sharon, to star in the next video? So how to do a decon of the shop.
Anything else? Sharon's been leading the effort on building a checklist.
Yeah.
Hey, Dallas, at one time you said something about increasing the number of roof exhaust fans. Did that ever happen yet? Or?
Well, we were set to when everything got shut down. I'm going to contact them again. These hot days, we had it all set up. We had the design. We had actually had the equipment acquired, but they shut down the company because of the governor's orders. And now I think I probably can get them out there to do that. The idea was that for everybody's information, if we'll come up putting a big exhaust fan, one that'll be reasonably quiet, over by the classroom to exhaust some of that heat out of the top of that room. And we wanted to have it in there. I actually wanted it in by the 1st of April, but I was getting ready to install it the 1st of March, and that's when we had the contractor out and doing the work on that.
Dallas, just a comment. You have talked to Tom about that, right?
Yes.
And you've shown him the specific location?
No, that was the next step, because I just got the information when things were shut down.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because that's part of the lease. You have to, he's got to approve the exact location, so.
Yeah.
Can you share that PowerPoint presentation with us somewhere, or it's a work in progress?
Well, it's constantly changing, but the video will be available, and I'd be happy to. I'll put that up on our resource page on the web.
Okay.
We're also going to need to firm up some areas that have been pretty much gray for a long time and make them black and white, i.e. shift ends at noon, next shift starts at 1. We got to have that time to clean everything up, so people have to be done and out of there by noon, so that that 1 hour can take place and the other people can get in on time.
Thanks, Wayne. I didn't put that in here, but it's one of the things I've been working through. Rick and Sharon and I have been talking through is I'm looking at a hard shutdown in between, where the only ones in the shop at that time would be the shift supervisors, potentially the overlap ones, and the doors are locked. You don't even let members in until you've done your pre-shift startup. But we have to eject everybody out of there, and that's part of the information piece we're going to have to share with the. I don't think we need an hour in between, but we do need a time in between there where we just don't have people going around and hitting the same spots we're working on.
Dallas, can you make that part of that directive that you're going to have everyone sign when they come in? That they have to going in that leave?
I was planning on doing it as part of Punch Pass. You actually change the times it shows on the Punch Pass.
Yeah.
Okay.
So are the laser shifts still going to be 2 hours, or are we going to make it a 3 hour and then nobody's there?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Well, the laser shifts were 2 hours, right?
Yeah, that's one that's a little, I haven't quite worked through how we do the logistics of that one. I intend that the wipe down in the laser room be done by the person who's coming on themselves. We just have a checklist there and the materials there for them to do their own. But I don't really want anybody in the shop at the same time as we're trying to do the rest of the shop.
Okay.
Anybody else?
So I just have a question about membership, maybe Gary. I know we got a lot of new members in January, February, December, and all the rest of the members, you know, haven't been able to use the shop for a couple of months. Are we looking at extending everybody's membership by a couple of months?
That's not the, Gary, you want to respond to that or you want me to?
Yeah, we've talked at length about this, and the plan is to, the short answer is no, but the full answer is what we do plan to do is to continue to allow members to carry unused slots over to the next year when they do renew. So in other words, if they haven't had time to use all their slots, they're not going to lose their slots so long as they stay a member of the shop. Financially, it was too big a hit to even consider, you know, allowing a suspension of the membership essentially. So, and frankly, very few people have even brought that up, and I think most people understand that. And Dallas, I thought, put it best. He said, you know, he said it's kind of like church. The fact that I can't go to the church anymore for the next couple of months doesn't mean I'm going to quit supporting the church. I mean, we're the church and we're the shop, and I think most people feel that way and have been very good about, you know, continuing to renew their memberships. We've seen virtually no drop off in renewals, which is very gratifying in addition to very important financially. So did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Dallas, I have a question about compliance.
Yeah.
So we already had enough trouble with people compliant to the already established safety rules in the shop. We're going to be doubling or tripling those requirements now with the virus restrictions. Are you going to be able to give us some guidelines to say you didn't comply with the virus restrictions and you're no longer going to be able to come into the shop?
We will deal very firmly with anybody who does not comply. And I don't want to put the shift supervisors in anything other than, you know, if they don't follow your instructions, then just send them home right then, and then leave it to Gary and I, to Rick and Sharon, to deal with the follow-up with those members. I don't want you to have to worry about that. But we just have to make this absolutely clear. We're not playing around. This is not something trivial. We're not talking about even the breaking a machine or doing some damage to something. We're talking about people's health. We cannot be loose about that. We've got to be just absolutely serious. And I intended to set that tone from the very beginning. I know Gary will do that, and Travis. We plan on doing a general membership Zoom meeting, talking about opening the shop here in the not too distant future. And we'll be reemphasizing it then, along with a lot of other messaging. But it'll be very clear that that's nothing that we're going to be, we have no tolerance for non-compliance on this one.
Okay, thank you.
That was actually the genesis of that one-page sheet that we're going to have them sign, so that they clearly understand what the rules are and that they don't have the ability to come back and say, well, I didn't know that was the rule. That one-page sheet should take care of that.
And then the video review of the shop in operation, everybody will be, I'm sure, warned in a sense, both by the meetings, etc. But the idea of video review of this to make sure that we don't have impediments to properly maintaining our rules is a good way to say right up front, we're going to be watching and watching for compliance and watching for problems. So please follow carefully. And I think that goes back then to the leadership making tough decisions. If somebody just can't seem to follow, then it's not the shift supervisor. It's somebody in the leadership saying, you just didn't follow what we had set up, please. Yeah.
We haven't talked about that much, but it's my intention that when we do restart, Rick, Sharon, and I are going to go back and review many shifts and go back and just review videos and see where we have inadvertent people getting close together or someone who's just refusing to wear their mask or doing some other violations, we're going to be watching that very closely right from the very beginning. And then, of course, when we find somebody that's a problem, then we'll be watching that even closer.
It points out any confusions too in the rules. You know, you've got to watch it, because as difficult as it's been just to have this discussion with you guys, you can clearly see that there are going to be things that will probably have to be changed. And so it's a good way to review your policies and practices and make sure that we have covered the safety aspects of both the disease and the shop usage. So yeah.
Perhaps we could also put up a large poster in the shop with that basic set of rules.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Good idea.
That is a good idea. That video surveillance thing that John just talked about is, you know, it's one of the arrows that's always been in your quiver. I don't know if you've used it, but some of you have received calls from Dallas or I or one of us that's watching the videos and asked you to deal with a situation we happen to have caught on the video, you know, real time. And don't ever hesitate to, you know, mention that to members. You know, that, hey, you know, even if I was willing to turn my head, they're watching. You know, there's nothing wrong with telling people that. And in fact, I would rather have them well aware of that, you know, you're not the only one watching for safety.
And you can't be everywhere, and we don't expect a shift supervisor to see everything. That's part of the problem, is even with only 3 people, you know, in the shop or something, you're not going to be able to see every action and every habit. So, yep.
You know, one of the things we want to emphasize in addition to the enforcement side of this, that we're watching sort of thing, is we want to create an environment in which our members feel that they're a sense of a member of a community. They've got social responsibility to this community to be looking out for each other. Yep. And if you don't care about yourself, you're not worried about the risk yourself, think about the position. And if you're healthy and young, think about the other person who is there that may have some underlying disease or more vulnerable than you. We just have to keep re-messaging that's something that we're all responsible for as being members of this woodworking community. I want to keep messaging that. But that doesn't mean to say we're not going to be also saying we're watching too.
Hey, Dallas, another question. Are we going to open up all 9 shifts for 3 people?
I think that's we're going to have to see the initial demand. I think we start off slow, and we'll open it up and see how well we do. But initially, I don't feel an obligation to do that.
Hey, John, question on casually passing by someone versus spending time with them. What's the relative risk, and how does that weigh out?
You know, I would guess that's pretty small, especially if we're wearing, you know, some of the PPE that we're talking about, the face mask and a face shield or something like that. You know, you really have to understand that what has to happen is something that spreads the virus, right? It just doesn't jump through the air. So you'd have to be breathing heavy, coughing, sneezing, or whatever, and the other person would have to be sort of within spit's distance at that moment. So, you know, passing by somebody, we should make every effort to shift the shop around enough so that doesn't happen much, but a few seconds of exposure is not likely to be much of a risk. So,
Say, Jerry. Yeah, this is Rick. The county's safe reopening plan template has this phrase in it. All employees have been instructed to maintain at least 6 feet distance from customers and from each other, except employees may momentarily come closer when necessary to accept payment, deliver goods or services, or otherwise as necessary.
yeah, so I think we're in the same category. And again, that does limit risk quite a bit. They really look at the probability of you shedding something to somebody else as having reasonably close contact for at least an extended period, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, rather than just literally a pass by where both of you breathe once or something. So the only problem we have, back to risk, is we still don't know what the infectious dose is because of the lack of symptomatic situations here. People don't know they're spreading, and we don't know by way of science yet how small an amount, how small a droplet, and how many virus particles it really takes on average to infect somebody. But it looks pretty significant with this particular virus. So, I mean, you don't need much, and you know, a small droplet, probably quite close to an aerosol, is enough. We have seen some spread in environments where people have been breathing heavy at more than 6 foot without any masks or any other protection and still spreading it. So there is some risk at that level.
Dana, you've been very quiet today. Do you have anything?
Say what?
I said, you've been very quiet today. Do you have anything for us?
I really don't. Everything that's been brought up today has made all kinds of sense to me, and I go along with pretty much everything. I think that once the powers to be, you, Gary, Sharon, Rick, make a decision that, okay, we can do this, it's time for another meeting and spell out exactly what it is that we are going to do, what supervisors will be responsible for, what we're going to look for, how we're going to run our shop. I think that we're on the right track. I'm with you, Dallas. I think we're at that point where we could open if it's done properly.
Good. Good. Edward Skinner, I see you're on, but I haven't heard from you. You still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
I'm seeing the sky.
It's not the sky. I think there's something wrong with the camera. I think it got water or something.
Oh, you dropped it in the tub, huh?
See, there's like you can see I'm here. It's just
Okay.
I'm wearing a white shirt, but it's not.
Oh, I do see it. My camera isn't working. That's why you've got the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge on mine. But you're right. I can see you moving vaguely. So something's over your camera there.
Yeah, it looks like it's way out of focus.
Yeah.
So are you, do you have anything that you wanted to add? Or questions, concerns? Edward?
No, what I'm wondering is, you know, like how many of the supervisors are gonna be willing to jump right in, and I'm saying that because I have questions about whether I would wanna, you know, just jump in and start being a supervisor. I have pretty much locked down. I go out about every 8 to 10 days to get groceries, and that's pretty much it.
Good. Well, we will see when the time comes.
Just
Dana?
for everybody's edification, we've tentatively planned a Zoom meeting for all of the shop members on Saturday. Travis, correct me if I'm wrong, Saturday the 16th at I think 11 a.m. So
Correct.
We'll put that out and basically go through the same we're going through right now, and go from there.
When the decision is finally come up to open the shop or something, is there going to be a video or something that will be available? People can go to our website, click on it and say, okay, we are opening the shop. This is the way it's going to be. So that no matter who they are, what they are, they can go in and find before they even come into the shop and know exactly the guidelines.
I think we'll have them posted. I'm not envisioning a video, but I'm not sure Sharon wants to star again. But we will have some written guidelines, though, and those will be the same thing that'll be in that document they're being asked to sign.
Understand, okay.
I really like the idea of Paul making more of the face shields and having them available, whether we sell them or.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you, Mary. Would you say it again?
I really like the idea of Paul making more face shields and having face shields available. We could
You know,
sell.
I find that idea interesting too, Mary. I was going to ask Paul after the meeting. What I'd like to ask of you, Paul, is if you've got 3 or 4 of those that we can get our hands on. I think some of the people that are currently using the shop, like Doug and myself, and maybe a Pat Duffy or whoever we've got in there, I would like to try it and see what it's all about. I think at best it's going to take some getting used to, and at worst it may or may not be workable. So I think before we make a carte blanche move, let's let's get a few people using them and see how they work.
Yes, I've got a couple that are, if you like, seconds that I didn't want to pass on to the hospitals that we can try. My own comment was that I had exactly the same reservations. Are my glasses going to steam up? Is it going to be uncomfortable? Is it going to hit my body and so on? And I have to say, the first time I put on one of the Prusa ones, which are fairly lightweight, I forgot that I was wearing it within a very few minutes, and went and banged my hand against the nose, against the thing when I went to scratch my nose. So,
serves you right.
Yeah, they're not enormously robust, but they're so light that you forget you're wearing them after a few minutes.
Okay.
Now, that was actually a dry run at an advertisement for them.
Can you make the clear part of it out of polycarbonate and kill two birds with one stone and make it a safety device as well?
Absolutely. That's actually the quickest and easiest part. What I did when I was making them for the hospitals was I bought some rolls of acrylic, and Travis and I conspired to get it set up, and he taught me how to use the laser, and it'll punch out you can probably punch out 4 of those screens every 5 minutes.
Wow.
It's the headband part that takes an hour and 25 minutes or so.
Okay. So guys, if you think of something else you'd like to talk about, run it up to, give me a shout out, or put it up on the shift supervisors discussion page, and we'll work it through. I think there's going to be a lot of things you're going to think about. I will put up this video on our supervisor's webpage, and I will also put up the PowerPoint as Nancy suggested. I've written down some suggestions that you had. We'll see about integrating some of those into our proposed plan, and we'll see where we go from here.
Sounds great.
Hey, Dallas, can I give a quick shout out here also? This Saturday from 11 to 3, I will be at the shop using the front door entrance to take entries for the kitchen utensils contest that is going on this month.
Hey guys, I want to close out by just saying one more time how much I appreciate all you guys do and your willingness to help us get this thing worked out and figure out a safe and appropriate way to get started. I also want to give particular thanks to John and Brenda for stepping up and helping us out. Boy, we couldn't have asked for better experts and better help. They've been with us right from the very beginning, and helping me figure out what the right way to go is, and understand some of the ramifications. Real practical solutions. They've come up with some good ideas on how we can wipe down metal surfaces without harming our tools, and practical ways we can get around it if we have a hard time finding Clorox wipes or whatever it is. There's a lot of other chemicals we can use that will do just as good a job. So once again, thank you, John and Brenda, and thanks to each of you for joining us today.
We'll work out the details, but we appreciate your confidence in us. And again, as we hear more from the supervisors, et cetera, about how things are working out, we'll modify things and keep everything safe. So,
good.
Yeah, we're happy to help.
Great, thank you.
Good.
All right.
Bye, guys.